stole the body while we slept. Now let's think about that. Let's look at that. Is that plausible? Does that explain the empty tomb? A lot of people believe that to this day. In fact, the scripture goes on to say in verse 15, this is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. That's true. Not just the Jews, the Gentiles, because the Gentiles, the Gentile Romans are saying it too. Many write this. Oh, the disciples stole the body. Justin Martyr, in his dialogue with Trypho the Jew in the middle of the 2nd century, matter of fact, he says, this is what you Jews are saying, the disciples stole the body. So 100 years later, that was the story, even as Scripture says. Does it hold water? Does it explain the tomb? Could it be a possible explanation? Let's consider it. The disciples stole the body while the Roman soldiers were asleep outside the tomb. Is that plausible, considering everything we know about the disciples and about Rome? Do the disciples at all seem like these guys who are just these adventurers and these risk takers who are going to take on the Roman army if need be? They don't know the guards are going to stay asleep. They're willing to risk it, to go in and take the body. They don't show themselves to be that kind of person at all. But let's say that they did. Let's say that they show themselves to be these heroic adventurers. What would they hope to accomplish? What does that get them? They get the dead body of Jesus. What does that do? What are you going to do with that? Oh, we're going to proclaim that he rose, though we know that he didn't. We're going to go and say, he rose, he's alive, he's the Son of God, though we know all of that's a lie. Let's suppose that we'll even grant that, which is complete nonsense. But let's say, okay, they were brave enough to take the body, and they were, insane enough to live for a message that they know is false and to die for it. They all die for this message, all of them. Even John dies in banishment. But they're all put to death for what they know is an absolute falsehood, and they know they're lying about God. They're pious Jews. You don't lie about God. I mean, you're risking hell now. So let's just say they're crazy enough and they're brave enough to pull this off. How could they do it? How in the world could they do it? How can they get to this tomb where the Roman soldiers are right outside sleeping, several dozen legionnaires, soldiers? How can they move a rock that's so big that 5 women in the Gospel of Mark say, we don't know how we're going to move this rock? They would put this groove in the ground, and this round stone would sit in the groove. You'd have to roll this giant stone out of the groove. It would make a lot of noise. And then they knock it over on its side because it's on its side and the angel sits on it. Boom! And not a soldier wakes up. And then they go in the tomb, and they don't just run in and grab the body and run out, 15 seconds. They slowly and methodically unwrap the body. 100 pounds of spices fall to the ground. Boom, 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 boom. The stone ground. And they're just unwrapping the body. Unwrapping the body. Maybe 40 minutes, I don't know. Take that face cloth nice and neatly, fold it and set it over here to the side. And none of the guards wake up. Because if one of them woke up, they would tell all the others, they would sound the alarm, and those guys would be dead. So they waste all this time, they take all this extra risk to unwrap the body, leave all the wrappings in there, and nobody wakes up. And then, after they do it, and the guards wake up and say they stole the body, they're not arrested. Remember, they just broken Roman law. They just broke the Roman seal. They just stole Roman property. The guards are protecting this. No one's allowed to take anything out of that tomb. All that the priests have to do is take the guards with their testimony and say, these apostles have defied Rome, arrest them, put them to death. And they would have been. Because they've broken the law. Why doesn't that happen? Why don't they put them on trial? They have no evidence. In fact, they know it's not true. They know that the Roman guards are not going to go on trial and risk this crazy story that they fell asleep, which would be a capital offense for them, to sleep on duty, in order to get the priests off the hook. They don't care about the priests. They don't care which group of Jews die. They're Romans. They want them all to die. So they can't try them. They can't put them on trial. So they have to pay off the guards to lie. And then they tell the guards, don't worry, if this comes to Pilate's ear, we'll explain it to him. Hey, we had to get them to say this. They didn't really fall asleep, but we got to stop this Jewish rebellion that's going to happen if they continue to proclaim Jesus' message. So, let us handle this. We know how to handle our own Jewish rabble, because that's how they looked at their own people. And so they assure the guards that Pilate will accept whatever it is, that story they'll tell. And the guards are certain, because they know how Pilate and the priests have to, work together. It's a lot like modern day politics, isn't it? And so all this happens, right? And again, the explanation is so inherently self-contradictory and ridiculous, because if the guards were asleep, how do they know the disciples took the body? How do they know that? If they were awake, if one of them was awake, they would know. They could say, oh, I saw the disciples take it. But if one of them was awake, they would wake all the other ones and they would kill the disciples. And if they're all asleep and they wake up and the stone is gone and the body's gone, how do they know? How do they know what happened? They don't know. They'd have to be awake to know. And if they're asleep, they don't know. Do you see how this whole story just falls to the ground? It's absurd. And yet, beloved,